Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DL Ignite. And today I'm with Dr. Michael Gerharz, though we're just going to call you Michael. And we're going to be talking about his book. And I've got it here on the side here because it's The Path to Strategic Impact. What great leaders understand about strategy communication and others don't. So, Michael, where can people find you?
The easiest place to start a conversation with me would be on my LinkedIn profile. If you want to check out my work, head over to my website, michaelgerharz.com.
Excellent. So tell me, what was the inspiration behind the book?
Yeah, actually, I've been working on that question for so long. This is one of the most important problems that people come with to me. I bet that every company had that problem at some point in their existence.
This is where we basically get a strategy and then nothing happens.
Exactly. I mean, you've been through that retreat or had that months-long project, and you've come up with a brilliant idea, and it's really super smart. You've checked all the boxes from all the great books, and this is a really smart strategy. And you've made that big announcement, right? With that town hall meeting, everyone was there and pumped. But like 3 weeks later, nothing has changed, and 3 months later, everything's forgotten. And that leads into that vicious circle where you repeat it next year and the year after, and every time you do, the frustration just grows. And in my experience,
I remember someone basically the slides, and what they did was the same slides every year. They just changed the date at the top.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and that's just a recipe for frustrating your team, isn't it? And the problem often isn't that the strategy isn't smart. I mean, the books have been written. That is not rocket science anymore. The criteria for great strategies are well known. The problem is much more that leadership somehow doesn't bridge the gap between what sounds smart in the boardroom and what needs to be done down on the floor when the choices have to be made, when the actions have to be taken. And how does that translate? And that's what this book is about.
So what are the common mistakes that leadership make then when they set a strategy and then nothing happens?
There's a bunch of them. I think a very common phenomenon is that it's that fancy slogan that gets painted on the walls that a marketing agency
They're usually
has
now on the back of toilet doors, aren't they?
Yeah, even that. Yeah, that a marketing agency has been paid to come up with, but that sounds fancy, but no one knows what it actually means.
Yeah.
Or there's the opposite of that,
and we've got to be. It's like, yeah, but everybody's that.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's also the opposite of that, right? Where it's that consultant speak formulaic language that sounds eloquent and professional and sounds like we know what we do, but again, the team down on the floor doesn't understand a word about that efficiency spearheading initiative, right? Or let alone these huge piles of PowerPoints that have everything figured out and all the data in it, all the analysis. But yeah, which of those 300 slides do I need to look at when I need to make the call and take action? So where is the actual information here?
So how is it that we can balance the short-term goals? Because most organizations are going to be run monthly or quarterly, and ultimately have this long-term strategic impact, which is basically coming top down from the leadership.
I think one important thing to appreciate here is that none of the great strategies that we see in existence today, like all of the textbook examples, none of those have been a stroke of insight where suddenly there was that brilliant strategy and everyone was happy ever after, right? It was much more an evolution, and I think that's a healthy way of approaching that of course, yeah, the day-to-day is real, and you need to look for the cash flow and that sales happen, but every time you make a choice, you can probably do two things at once: make the immediate call, do the pragmatic choice, but also reflect back on how that aligns with the broader path that we're on, with the longer term vision. And so whenever you have that choice to make those tiny tweaks, so that over the course of a few months or sometimes even years, you arrive at that really concise and succinct statement that rallies the team behind you.
So we've just had a comment from Andrew Slesser. Andrew is a very a regular watcher of ours, and he's just saying good morning or good afternoon to people out there. So thank you, Andrew, for tuning in. So you've come up with this methodology, which you call PATH, PATH. Do you want to talk us through that?
Yeah, I thought that was just a brilliant coincidence, right? That, well, the path that we're on with our strategy happens to be very nicely applicable to the four basic principles that I see that really up your game in communication there. And PATH stands for P is plain and simple. So can you find words that everyone on your team understands?
So this is not the consultant speak.
Exactly.
That we often see,
That is well, basically operational truths that you observe, just told in plain English that everyone can understand. Then A is actionable. Can you frame it in a way that people know what it means for the everyday choices they need to make, for the actual actions that they have to perform? Then T is transformative. So actions are good, right? But you're not going to make a difference by just playing by the rules. You want to make the bold moves. And how do you encourage this? And can you find words that encourage your team to make those bolder moves? And then
I think sometimes, I don't know about you, but when I've worked for corporates, I've sat in meetings and actually been underwhelmed. Because if you've got the team, if you've got the culture and the team are up for it, what we want are courageous, bold moves where we can see the hunger in the leadership to win. I mean, I've worked for some organizations where they've made outrageous statements about killing the competition and stuff like that. But actually, that was because we were up for it as well. The message just struck home with us.
Yeah. And part of the reason might be that, well, we sometimes mistake that transformative spirit with using grandiose words, right? Those spectacularly ambitious words that, well, sound great in a textbook and in an analysis, but that don't really inform you what you need to do. It's the plain English, the language that we can see, the examples that we can see, like, for example, when FedEx used when it absolutely positively has to be there overnight. That's just the most plain way of saying that we want to be the most reliable carrier in the country.
Yes.
But that sounds ambitious, but what does it mean? The most reliable. That is transformative for sure. But how does that translate to my actions when it's absolutely positively has to be there overnight? Well, I can almost see that. I can see the package being delivered. I know what to do when I've missed the train in the evening, but it has to be there overnight. So of course I'm going to charter the truck to get it there, right? And what helps me to do that is the fourth principle. It's H, heartfelt. So can I find words that both the team and leadership believe in and really stand behind, and give all of us a reason to really show up here and make a difference.
And so what part does communication play in this?
The concepts can be there, right? But the words that you use to communicate those ideas, they make all the difference. For example, if you take Alcoa, that aluminum manufacturer,
that aluminium in the UK.
Yeah, you're from the UK, exactly. Aluminium. So, who struggled in the 80s, and appointed Paul O'Neill to be the new CEO. And he came up with a very surprising strategy for the company. And when he announced it, everyone was, well, kind of responding with that blank stare. So what is it even talking
when he
about?
came up with the strategy about there were going to be the health and safety, wasn't it?
Exactly. It's 2 words: 0 incidents. That was his strategy.
0 incidents. And
That
like
was his.
everyone was going like, well, surely, what about the stock market and what about the investment you're going to do? And
Exactly. That was the question marks. But
Yeah.
the brilliance of that strategy is what was that this was a truly ambitious strategy that was communicated brilliantly. Because let's look at another way of saying the same strategy, which would be we're going to prioritize workers' safety over the next 3 years. That's the same strategy, right? It's the same spirit, but it's a totally different perception on the other side, because prioritizing worker safety, that is kind of a lazy way of saying it. That is easily satisfied by printing some more posters or putting some more warning signs at the machines or at the entrance. But 0 incidents doesn't allow for that. 0 incidents takes that to the extremes through the choice of words. It doesn't allow for compromises. We need to absolutely do everything to bring it down to 0 incidents. And that's what happened. And that's what triggered a ripple effect, because that same rigor to caring for the details rippled down to other areas.
He published his telephone number, didn't he? And he said if there's any plant where you, and he said he went around all the plants, didn't he, and talked to all said that I want a meeting with the workers. You've never met the CEO's never met the workers. And he stood up and said, if you think that there is a single instance of health and safety, this is my telephone number.
Yeah. And that language and that way of communicating a strategy and that openness put the workers at the center. Suddenly, it wasn't just a business goal to bring the numbers up. The personal goals and the business goals align, because that was in the workers' best interests to have a safe workplace. And they felt seen and heard, and that's why they brought so much more effort in and so much more of their passion in there. So
what does or how does PATH differ from other methods?
Well, I actually don't look at it so much as a method, but more as a checklist. So this is basically an easy test for how good a job your communication does at communicating what your strategy is really about, what you're trying to achieve. And if you ask those questions honestly and repeatedly, you're not only going to end up with words that make so much more sense for everyone involved, but they will also help you spot the weaknesses in your strategy. Because if you really answer them honestly, you'll see where your actual strategy doesn't allow for those transformative and heartfelt and plain and simple words. And so just by being brutally honest with those 4 principles, you have a tool to test and tweak your strategy, and when it's great, also find words that make sense to everyone involved.
Do you have any other examples?
Plenty, actually. So I think a great example would be to compare, to look at Kodak and Netflix. Two businesses who often serve as textbook examples. One of strategic brilliance, the other of strategic failure, right? But I think there's a common theme here that would easily have helped the one failing to become another winning one. So in Netflix's case, it's famous because it made that brilliant transition and early on recognized the significance of the internet and streaming, and made the transition from being a DVD rental service to the streaming platform. And the reason that they could do that was their mission and their strategy was never about being the leader in DVD rentals, right? It was always to entertain the world. That was their strategy from early days on. So switching to streaming might look like a very significant shift from the outside, but from the inside, it might feel very different. It's much more like just switching lanes on a broader path. And now, if we look at Kodak, the same couldn't happen when they missed the opportunity of digital cameras, despite being the inventors
Apart
of it.
from
Yeah.
creating the first one.
Yeah, I mean, they've clearly seen it, and they've invented it, but they dismissed it. Why? Because their strategy has been about making films, and so would they have started or at least transitioned to a broader path of, let's say, capturing moments, then capturing moments on a film versus in a digital camera is merely switching lanes on a broader path. And so I think that the choice of words and the way that you frame your strategy can help you see those opportunities much more clearly compared to the more traditional way of speaking in those consultant terms of efficiency and revenue and bottom lines.
So what advice would you have for leaders that were facing resistance?
I think the most powerful tool is listening, right? And I think the most important step when you feel that your strategy isn't working, that you ask as many members of your team as possible one question. So, what do you think is our strategy about? And then just listen and collect all the answers, and you'll be surprised by how many different answers you'll get. And then, of course, there's two ways to deal with that. One way is to, well, dismiss it and say, well, yeah, strategy is the leadership's task anyway. So, yeah, it's supposed to be that way, right? The other way would be to, well, actually, I think there are three. The other way would be to be totally disappointed and frustrated that, well, it just doesn't work. Or the third one is to be thankful for the feedback, take that as your springboard, and just work from there and look for patterns and look for the shortcomings in the way that you communicated, and take ownership of the fact that if they didn't get it, they didn't get it, right? Then it's not their fault, it's your fault. You'll have to tweak your message. And I think a brilliant way to tweak it is to look for ways that makes it more visible, that makes your language more visible, so that your team can actually see it. What does it mean? What does that mean? What does that look like? Efficient logistics. Yeah, it has to be there overnight.
Yeah, we often talk to our clients about using the language that we learned when we were children, because actually that resonates with us. You know, when we talk about efficiency,
Yeah,
if I say the word efficiency, my description of it will probably be different to yours.
very much. Yeah.
Whereas, you know, rather than the word assist, use the word help and things like that, because it's the language that we learn as children that we actually kind of feel and empathize with.
Yeah.
So, in terms of your path framework, how do you see this working as organizations grow? So, if we use path today, what are we going to do as we grow through with the organization? How do you see path growing with that organization?
Yeah. I think Apple is a great example for that. Well, Apple run by one very strong mantra, and that's that we're not here to make the most, but the best, right? The best products that enrich people's lives. And that is a theme that runs throughout the whole company in the way that they design the company, that they choose which products to make, how to sell them, how the website looks, how the ads work, how their services arm works, and so on. But of course, that has to be made specific for each of their departments, and so each of their departments and their specialists, they have their special version of that. And so it needs to be refined, but according to the spirit. So the overarching theme is one that's true for all, but it might have to be appended by, well, a second sentence, or by a tweak that makes sense more for hardware design compared to customer service or running the shops, right? And so that's one of the challenges that you'll have as a larger company compared to a startup that's just starting out with a handful of people, right? That you have to refine it the further down you get in the hierarchy.
Michael, thank you so much for coming on and talking about your book, The Path to Strategic Impact: What Great Leaders Understand About Strategy, Communication, and Others Don't. If I wanted to buy a copy, where can I get a copy?
Just head over to Amazon and look for Path to Strategic Impact or my name, and you'll find it there, or follow the pointer on my website.
And if we wanted to find more information about you, where can we find that?
Head over to michaelgerharz.com, GERHARZ, one word, michaelgerharz.com. You'll find everything there, from the free resources to a little bio. And yeah.
Excellent, Michael. It is so fascinating. Thank you so much for coming on and talking to us today. And thank you for Andrew for watching as well.